At the time that Sam Houston was trying to get a treaty between the Indians and the pioneers, Cross Timbers was the dividing point between the Indians and the pioneers moving west. So that's one of the reasons this area is significant historically. Back then, Cross Timbers was an impenetrable forest.
The people, the hardy pioneers who came down here, really came to a wilderness area. They chose this area, among other things, probably because of the timber. Whereas a lot of North Texas is very, very bare. There's a great deal of timber here. This is called the Cross Timbers area. You run into that name quite a bit.
When the immigrants came here in 1844 and 1845 from Missouri, they came into Grapevine and set up a church the following year, which is the Lonesome Dove Church, and created the first settlement in Southlake.
The church was organized about a mile and a half or so from here at somebody's cabin, and then they built on this property in 1847. The church was organized just a few days after Texas became a state. We have a few artifacts here at the church too, by the way. We have a quilt the ladies of the church made in 1913, and they embroidered the names of all of the members of the church at that time. So many of the pioneer families of Tarrant County are listed there.
They built the church in 1846, although they arrived almost a year before Texas became part of the Union. At the time they came to Texas, it was a country unto itself. Their settlement was the first in northeast Tarrant County. The Lonesome Dove School was built before the church was built. It was a log cabin constructed in 1847. There wasn't any lumber in this area, so everything was made out of logs. Then, in 1849, gold was discovered at Sutter's Mill in California, and Southlake played a vital part in the gold rush. Although there were several transcontinental routes to the gold fields, one of the larger ones went right through Southlake. There were two routes that went through North Texas. One originated at Johnson Station. The second originated at what is now Las Colinas in Irving at Highway 114 and the Trinity River. That area was called California Crossing. People coming from the east all congregated on the west bank of the Trinity River there. They did not leave on a wagon train until they had at least 100 wagons for security reasons. The distance between California Crossing and the Bicentennial Park was exactly 14 miles. That was a full day's ride for 100 wagons. These pioneers would encircle the hill at Bicentennial Park because there were a number of freshwater springs there. Game was plentiful, and they had all the wood they wanted because of the site's proximity to the Cross Timbers forest. They would spend their first night on the track there. Their animals needed grass. The people in the wagon trains didn't carry hay or grain with them. Traveling through North Texas, the wagon trains could leave a month earlier than those using the northern routes cross-country to the gold fields. The buffalo was plentiful to the west of us on the prairie, and east of us was also prairie.
I wonder about our old pioneers, what they think of these airplanes flying over. They speak real often of picking cotton on the Grapevine Prairie. Well, that's now what we call DFW Airport out there, and it was quite an area for cotton farming, and also cantaloupe used to be a huge cash crop right there. They used to have a big cantaloupe festival every year. Some of our old timers remember when that happened as well.
The last buffalo was killed in 1850 by Paul Medlin, who is buried in the cemetery in Westlake. One of the men who fought in the Battle of San Jacinto lived here in Southlake by Big Bear Creek. He fought in the War for Independence for Mexico. His name was Thomas Jefferson Thompson. There used to be a community called Dove just south of the Lonesome Dove Church. The community was developed in 1870.
There used to be a cotton gin, a Woodman of the World Lodge Hall, a store, a blacksmith shop, and a school. So pretty good little community, but all that's gone now. But the church is still here.
There were two other communities within the city of Southlake. One was Jellicoe. They had a post office, a general store, and a cotton gin. The community was developed by a guy named Wilson, who had a grist mill, a blacksmith shop, and a syrup press. The other was White's Chapel. Back in 1917, the state started merging schools. They merged 3 schools in Southlake: White's Chapel, Sam's School, and Dove School. They all became part of the Carroll school system in 1919.
When I first got here, we had the one building that has been the shipping and receiving building on the front part of the old campus. We had a frame building that we used for cafeteria and where we held programs and this sort of thing, a stage and this sort of thing. And there were only 125 kids in 8 grades. We only had 8 grades at that time. We were named one of the top 8 school districts in the state of Texas academically. The people in this community had high expectations for their children, just like the parents do today. Southlake Carroll is tops everything.
A failed railroad route through Southlake became Highway 114. The Dallas Pacific and Southwestern Railroad was going to run between Dallas and Albuquerque and from Dallas to New Orleans. They brought up land in Southlake before going bankrupt. Although they never laid rails, they graded the land for the railroad. So when the Texas Highway Department was going to lay out a highway between Lubbock and Dallas, they were looking for the most direct route. They bought the right of way to the old Dallas Pacific and Southeastern Railroad land. For the frontier families who decided to stay in Southlake, their settlements were named White's Chapel, Sam's Schoolhouse, Jellicoe, and Dove. Timber was abundant in the area, and artisan springs or wells provided needed water. The Dove Creek at Lonesome Dove and Dove still flows and was used for swimming as well as baptisms in the community's early years. Most families raised dairy cattle, farmed cotton, and melon. By the 1870s, there was a general store, blacksmith shop, schoolhouse, post office, Baptist church, and a meeting hall. Children attended school in the community through the 8th grade. The only high school in the area was in Grapevine, and most local families traded or shopped in Grapevine for staples like coffee and flour. On the farms, women killed the hogs, made their own soap, lion lard, milked the cows, made butter, and drew the water each day from the well. They also washed the clothes and grew and canned their own vegetables. The men tilled the soil, tended and bred the livestock, harvested the crops, and arranged transportation to market. The average house had no more than 4 rooms with a fireplace for cooking. There was no indoor plumbing. Social activities included school for the children and church for the whole family. Preachers visited monthly, and other Sundays were spent singing and worshiping together. To get to picnics and holiday parties, families walked, rode horseback, or traveled in wagons. Bandits Bonnie and Clyde were allegedly visiting family in the area when they shot and killed state troopers Edward Bryan Wheeler and H.D. Murphy on an Easter morning in 1934. A granite marker near Highway 114 and Dove marks the spot where the shooting took place.
Well, Bonnie and Clyde, when they killed those 2 policemen over here in the 30s,
oh yeah,
that was newsworthy.
Cars and trucks didn't come into use until the 1930s. By that time, Grapevine was the largest nearby town, and farmers trucked crops there by wagon. Cattle were herded to the Swift Armor meat packing plant in Fort Worth. In the 1940s, electricity arrived, followed shortly by telephone service. The area remained rural. The construction of Grapevine Lake brought more families to the area. When the community was incorporated in 1956, the town's population was 200 people. In 1959, the community formed the Carroll Independent School District to more rigorously control the education of children in grades 1 through 8. Major development came on the heels of the opening of Dallas-Fort Worth Airport in 1974. By 1980, the city of Southlake had a population of 2,800.
Well, population-wise, it's grown from 2,000 to 23 or 4,000. Land-wise, I mean, when Southlake originally started, it was only about 250 or 60 acres. And then it grew and grew and grew, and now it's 23 square miles. So
right.
Most people don't realize it, but Southlake is the 3rd largest city geographically in Tarrant County. Fort Worth's the largest, then Arlington, then Southlake.
Really?
Yeah.
And it's larger than Grapevine?
Larger than Grapevine, Colleyville, North Richland Hills, Hurst, Eunice, Bedford, all those towns are smaller in size.
Right.
They have larger populations, but smaller in size.
Later, the opening of Alliance Airport would attract even more families looking for strong schools, reliable zoning, and access to area recreation. With the opening of Southlake Town Square in 1999, the city was able to offer centralized retail shopping, commercial space, and government offices, forming a natural focus for the entire community.
Mayor, the town square was the biggest thing.
A wonderful place to live, a place of peace and prosperity, very low crime rate, and just a wonderful group of folks that seem to enjoy each other and enjoy having a small town atmosphere, although now we're not really a small town anymore.
You know, it's just my favorite place to live.